El Chapo is locked up for life at the Supermax prison in Colorado.
Information on key members of Mexico's most dangerous drug cartel, the Sinaloa Cartel.
Mexican police have arrested a top-ranking member of the Sinaloa drug cartel, Damaso Lopez.
In the chilling annals of crime, few organizations loom as large or as menacingly as the Sinaloa Cartel. Today, we're venturing into the belly of the beast. This story isn't for the faint-hearted, as we unravel the ruthless reign of three prominent figures from the infamous Sinaloa Cartel. Stick around to discover a hidden side of the underworld, where loyalty is everything and betrayal costs lives. Remember, this is a tale that threads through the darkest corridors of power and leads us to a mysterious object known as the Black Box. But what is it, and how does it connect these fearsome figures? Let's find out. El Chapo, the ascension of an infamous legend. Few names echo as loudly or as infamously as Joaquin Archibaldo Guzman Loera, known colloquially as El Chapo. Born between 1954 and 1957 in La Tuna, Badiraguato, a remote and impoverished municipality in Sinaloa, Mexico, Guzman's life was shaped by his surroundings. The harsh realities of this region, a notorious breeding ground for drug traffickers, were undoubtedly instrumental in propelling Guzman into the criminal world. The 1980s marked Guzman's initiation into the world of drug trafficking. He began his criminal journey under the aegis of a formidable Guadalajara drug cartel led by the ruthless Miguel Ángel Felix Gallardo. His cunning, resourcefulness, and determination fueled his rapid ascent through the ranks of this organization. Guzman was a quick learner, and his adeptness at navigating the treacherous waters of the drug trade did not go unnoticed. The dissolution of the Guadalajara cartel in the late 1980s presented Guzman with the opportunity to seize the reins of the Sinaloa cartel. His reign was punctuated with a blend of brutal aggression and brilliant strategy. In no time, he turned out to be one of the most vicious criminals in history. One prominent victim was Edgar Galvan, an American mechanic. El Chapo's cartel kidnapped Galvan in 2009 while he was vacationing in Mexico. He was accused of stealing a car, a claim he firmly denied. They held him captive, using inhumane treatment and brutal force to intimidate him. For 9 terrifying months, he lived in fear, never knowing if he would see his family again. His freedom finally came when the cartel was paid a hefty ransom. The trauma left Edgar with psychological scars that he struggled with for the rest of his life. In addition to individuals, El Chapo's reign of terror impacted entire communities. The people of Sinaloa, his home state, often bore the brunt of his actions. Innocent civilians were caught in the crossfire of brutal gunfights between El Chapo's cartel and rival groups. The incessant violence forced people to flee their homes, disrupting the lives of thousands. The people of Tijuana, a city bordering the US, also fell victim to El Chapo's ambitions. His attempts to gain control over this key trafficking route led to intense gang violence, drastically affecting the city's security and peace. Innocent people lived in fear, their daily lives tinged with the constant dread of violence. Those who stood against El Chapo weren't spared either. Many journalists and law enforcement officials who dared to oppose him were ruthlessly silenced. Their courageous stand against corruption and drug trafficking cost them their lives, leaving their families in despair. Under El Chapo's leadership, the Sinaloa cartel deployed a series of innovative smuggling techniques that defied the authorities and emboldened the organization. From constructing air-conditioned tunnels beneath the Mexico-US border to concealing drugs within innocuous household items like chili pepper cans and fire extinguishers. Guzman's strategy, mastery, and audacity were clear. He even orchestrated the catapulting of drugs over the border. Under his command, the Sinaloa cartel dealt in a vast array of drugs, including marijuana, heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine, reinforcing its position as a juggernaut of illicit narcotics. However, in 1993, the law finally caught up with Guzman. Arrested in Guatemala and extradited to Mexico, he faced charges of murder and drug trafficking. Acquitted of the former but convicted of the latter, as well as firearm possession, he was sentenced to more than 20 years in a maximum security prison. Yet even the formidable walls of the penitentiary could not confine Guzman's influence. Resorting to bribery, he managed to continue orchestrating the Sinaloa cartel's operations from behind bars, demonstrating his unparalleled grip on the organization. By 1995, Guzman had officially assumed control of the Sinaloa cartel. His infamy was set in stone 6 years later when, in 2001, he staged a daring escape with the aid of corrupt prison guards. The tale of El Chapo and the Mexican cartels is a reminder of the endless cycle of rise and fall that accompanies the drug trade. Each crackdown, each fallen leader only served to pave the way for another, often more violent and ruthless, to rise in their place. This brings us to the tale of Ismael El Mayo Zambada. Two figures towered above the rest, emerging as the new linchpins of drug trafficking. Ismael Zambada Garcia, more notoriously known as El Mayo, the fearsome leader of the Sinaloa Cartel, and his counterpart, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, alias El Mencho, who helmed the Jalisco Cartel New Generation. Both were no strangers to the world of narcotics, their names synonymous with power, terror, and unfathomable wealth. The fall of the Sinaloa Cartel's iron-fisted leader, Joaquin Guzman Loera, alias El Chapo, had left a void that El Mayo effortlessly filled. Yet, whispers within the criminal underworld suggested that El Mayo had always been the puppet master behind the scenes, pulling the strings and shaping the Sinaloa Cartel's trajectory. Today he stands untouchable, having claimed the reins of power and showing no signs of relinquishing them anytime soon, especially during President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's tenure. His uncanny knack for remaining elusive, coupled with his control over the country's criminal groups, makes him indispensable to the government. On the other side of the spectrum, El Mencho cemented his position as the head of the Jalisco Cartel New Generation, or the CJNG. His influence permeated through 10 states, making him an indomitable force within the organization he founded in 2008. Interestingly, the CJNG had initial ties with the Sinaloa Cartel, but a bitter fallout resulted in a parting of ways. The drug war took a turn for the ominous with the sudden appearance of narcomantas, banners displaying chilling messages in the coastal state of Sinaloa. These grim missives were attributed to El Mayo. One of them bore a sinister warning to the more ruthless cartels: either line up or I'll line you up. The words, albeit cryptic, suggested a firm and unyielding resolve. El Mayo was making it abundantly clear that he intended to wield his power during López Obrador's administration, sending shockwaves through the ranks of organized crime. El Mayo represents the last pillar of the old guard. The surviving torchbearers have either succumbed to death or are languishing behind bars. Until 1997, the drug trafficking domain was ruled by Amado Carrillo Fuentes, alias the Lord of the Skies, the commander of the once mighty Juarez Cartel, which was brought to life by Pablo Acosta Villarreal, known as El Zorro de Ojinaga. Following Aguilar Guajardo's assassination, Carrillo Fuentes seized control, only to have his reign ended by his own death. His brother, Vincent Carrillo Fuentes, alias El Viceroy, assumed command, though his reign was short-lived, ending with his arrest in the city of Torreon, in northern Coahuila state. The Juarez cartel was an amalgamation of the most formidable players in the drug trade: El Mayo, the Carrillo Fuentes brothers, and Juan José Esparragosa Moreno, alias El Azul. The latter had a reputation as a master negotiator among rival factions. His demise, reportedly due to a heart attack following a car crash, marked the end of an era. These menacing players, El Mayo's counterparts, defined the Juarez cartel's rule. The Beltran Leyva brothers, Arturo being the most notorious among them, and Ignacio Coronel Villarreal, alias Nacho, contributed to the group's infamy. After the reported death of Carrillo Fuentes, it took 4 years for this cocktail of capos to regroup and create the Sinaloa Cartel, helmed by the notorious El Chapo. It was during the early days of Vicente Fox's presidency in 2001 when the authorities allegedly colluded to secure El Chapo's escape from prison, a scandal that cost millions of dollars in bribes. This was a significant turning point that favored the National Action Party, Partido Acción Nacional, or PAN, who sought to unite criminal groups to control organized crime and align the belligerent cartels, such as the Gulf Cartel, the Zetas, and the family Michoacana, among other things. The genesis of the so-called Drug Trafficking Federation was a strategic move with El Azul at the helm, striving to accomplish this ambitious mission. However, his efforts fell short, and the Sinaloa Cartel ascended to global dominance as the most potent drug trafficking organization, extending its influence to around 50 countries worldwide. The grand vision of forging a unified criminal megastructure still lingered in the background. With the dawn of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's administration, it seemed plausible that this project could come to fruition. The president had made a bold promise not to pursue the heads of Mexico's drug trafficking organizations, a strategy partly attributable to the need to establish order within Mexico's chaotic criminal landscape. He recognized their necessity in the backdrop of a national economy heavily reliant on drug trafficking. Two formidable bosses held the reins, El Mencho and El Mayo, yet one eclipsed the other due to his strategic intelligence and deft management skills. With a history in the drug trade dating back to the 1970s, El Mayo had evolved from a humble furniture store employee to a kingpin in narcotics, his tenure spanning over 4 decades. El Mayo, along with El Azul, believed that drug trafficking, inherently a business venture, did not necessitate excessive violence. This perspective, lost amidst the blood-soaked rivalries over the years, might regain traction during López Obrador's tenure, a transformative period for Mexico's narcotics landscape. This administration was the first to openly state its non-confrontational stance towards top drug lords, even floating the idea of granting amnesty to some criminals. This new dynamic provided a favorable climate for the organized crime groups operating in Mexico, suggesting an unspoken agreement between the government and the mafia, a pax mafiosa. López Obrador was determined to ensure governability, but he did not wish to deplete his resources in the process. It was as if the president had passively communicated, "Let the capos manage the capos," while he focused on addressing pressing social issues. El Mayo's messages via the narcomantas in Sinaloa and other states resonated with an authoritative call for unity among the cartels. The shift in organized crime's rules in Mexico was palpable. El Mayo, unquestionably the government's capo, began his task of aligning the aggressive groups that faced imminent capture or death. His message was crystal clear, aiming to establish new rules in the Mexican criminal underworld. Either line up or I'll line you up. There was no criminal or political figure who wielded as much power as El Mayo. Only he could assure the federal government of his capacity to maintain order within the country. No other figure commanded such influence to align Mexico's criminal factions. El Mayo was not merely a figurehead, he embodied power, leaving no room for misinterpretation. Others must adapt to the new rules, willingly or otherwise. Over time, various capos enjoyed power and influence through different administrations. Under Carlos Salinas, 1988 to 1994, it was Juan Garcia Abrego. Under Ernesto Zedillo, 1994 to 2000, it was Amado Carrillo Fuentes. During Vicente Fox and Felipe Calderon's administrations, 2000 to 2006 and 2006 to 2012 respectively, El Chapo from the Sinaloa Cartel reigned supreme. Under Enrique Peña Nieto, the Sinaloa Cartel enjoyed years of impunity until El Chapo's capture, extradition to the United States, and subsequent life sentence. Meanwhile, El Mencho's CJNG gained momentum. However, under López Obrador, it was evident that El Mayo was indisputably the top dog. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of the Sinaloa Cartel and want to keep exploring the labyrinthine world of organized crime, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more revealing insights into the underworld. The unconventional rise of El Lisenciado. Our story continues with a man, an ordinary citizen hailing from Sinaloa, born February 22, 1966. This man is Damaso López Núñez, but the world knows him better as El Licenciado. With that nickname, which translates to the graduate, he carries an irony so profound, it would be amusing if it weren't linked to one of the deadliest criminal organizations in the world, the Sinaloa Cartel. Before the notorious alias, El Licenciado was a studious young man who walked the hallowed halls of a law university, delving into a realm of justice and order. Armed with his degree, he ventured into the realm of public service, an embodiment of law and order, securing a job at the prosecutor's office in his home state of Sinaloa. His ambition and dedication were clear as he climbed the professional ladder, reaching an esteemed position of a senior official in the administration branch of the prison system in 1999. His job wasn't just any role in the prison system. It was a position of authority within maximum security institutions. He was the gatekeeper of society's most feared outcasts, the ones who had been deemed too dangerous to walk free among the innocent. Among these outcasts was the notorious Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán, held within the ominous walls of the Puente Grande Penitentiary in Jalisco. This was the turning point for El Licenciado. The man who had once held the keys to these maximum security cells was now enticed by the intoxicating allure of the underworld. An opportunity arose that would change his destiny forever. The man he was tasked with keeping behind bars, El Chapo, had other plans. Plans that El Licenciado found himself drawn to. According to the various Mexican and US police sources, it was El Licenciado who orchestrated one of the most audacious prison escapes of the century. On January 19, 2001, El Chapo vanished from Puente Grande. With a well-organized network of corrupt prison guards, the kingpin made his exit, leaving behind a baffled and embarrassed administration. Once the deed was done, El Lisenciado resigned from his position, leaving behind his life as a public servant. But if you think that was the end of his story, think again. El Licenciado was just getting started. His connection with El Chapo and his pivotal role in the infamous escape had opened doors to a world he had once vowed to fight against, the world of the Sinaloa Cartel. Embracing his new path, El Licenciado leveraged his profound knowledge of the law enforcement system and its loopholes, becoming a vital asset for El Chapo. The prison escape was just the beginning of their partnership. Over the years, El Licenciado climbed the ranks within the Sinaloa Cartel, gradually becoming one of El Chapo's closest confidants. Anabel Hernandez, a renowned Mexican journalist, shed light on this transition in her writings. Over a span of 15 years, El Licenciado served El Chapo, demonstrating a remarkable acumen for building and managing his criminal structure. The structure stretched across the Americas, weaving a complex web of illicit activities that included buying off authorities through hefty bribes, drug trafficking, and maintaining a formidable network that spanned Mexico, the United States, Central and South America. El Licenciado's role in the cartel was not just administrative. U.S. authorities began recognizing him as a significant player in the Sinaloa Cartel's drug trafficking activities. In January 2013, the Office of Foreign Assets Control of the United States Department of the Treasury sanctioned El Licenciado, citing his significant role in international drug trafficking. According to these sanctions, El Licenciado was allegedly responsible for transporting several tons of narcotics from Mexico to the United States, demonstrating his deep involvement in the cartel's operations. Only a few months later, in March 2013, the case against El Licenciado strengthened. U.S. federal prosecutors indicted him on drug trafficking and money laundering charges. The evidence presented painted a picture of a man who was not merely a participant in these illicit activities, but a crucial operative. The proceeds of his criminal activities reportedly amounted to an estimate of $280 million, further indicating the scale of his operations within the cartel. These are tales not of heroes, but of men who chose a path of ruthlessness, forever marking their names in the annals of criminal history.